Hello everyone. So today we will be talking about polynomial functions. So a polynomial function typically looks like a function associated with an x is going to equal to some number 2 to the x and then to a power of something. Let's assume it's going to be to a 2 plus, let's say, another x plus 1. So a polynomial function is typically a function that is associated with different variables, right, that are going to be the same variable, which in this case is going to be x, but they have different powers associated with each of the variables. Now, when determining an even or an odd function, we are going to focus on the variable x that has the greatest power, which in this case is going to be this 2x squared. And then we're going to see what to do from there. Okay? So let's start with a couple of examples. Number 1, it's going to be simply f of x is going to equal to 2x squared plus x plus 1. Notice that my number, or my x that has the greatest power, in this case is going to be this 2x squared. So when identifying if it's an even or an odd function, we're going to look at this 2x squared and we're going to look specifically at the power. In this case, our power is 2. 2 is an even number. What this tells us is that our function is actually an even function. Okay, so now let's try with a different example. Number 2. Let's say that we have f of x is going to equal to x plus 1. Again, what we have to do is that we have to identify the x with the greatest exponent. In this case, we only have one x, but there is no exponent associated with it. If it doesn't have an exponent, we assume that there is an imaginary 1 right there. Thus, this one has an exponent of 1, which means that my function, that this number 1, is actually an odd number, which means that my function is an odd function. Now let's look at example number 3. Let's say that we have something like f of x is going to equal to negative 3x cubed plus 4x plus 1. Again, we are going to identify the x with the greatest power. In this case, we have two x's, which is going to be this x cubed and this x. But we know that this x cubed has the greatest power. So again, we're going to circle the greatest power. What this tells us is that the greatest power is 3. 3 is an odd number. And thus, this shows us that this is an odd function. Thus, what we need to know is first to identify, again, the x with the greatest power. Then, the greatest power is actually going to tell us if our function is even or odd. So, if you have powers 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on, our function is odd. And if we have powers 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on, our function is actually even.